I'm a 29-year-old woman, and for most of my life, I put my family before everything else. I sacrificed my education, my savings, my dreams, everything, because I believed that if I just worked hard enough, one day things would turn around. One day, my family would appreciate everything I did for them. That day never came. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew everyone. My family was tight-knit, or at least that's what I thought. My dad owned a small auto repair shop, and for a while it was enough to keep us afloat. But when the economy took a hit and a few bad investments went south, the business collapsed. Practically overnight, we went from getting by to drowning in bills. It was around this time that I was finishing up my last year of college. I was so close to graduating, so close to finally having opportunities that would let me build a future for myself. But then came the desperate pleas from my family, my mom crying about how they didn't know how they were going to pay rent, my dad sinking into hopelessness, my older brother Ian making reckless choices that only made things worse, and I caved. I dropped out of college and picked up as many jobs as I could. I told myself it was temporary, just until things got better. I worked in retail during the day, cleaned offices at night, and picked up shifts as a waitress on weekends. Every dollar I earned went straight into keeping my family afloat. I covered bills, bought groceries, and even paid off Ian's debts when he got himself into trouble, again and again. Ian had always been bad with money. Gambling, impulsive purchases, get-rich-quick schemes, you name it. Every time he screwed up, I was the one fixing it. My mom made sure of that. "You're his sister," she'd say. "Family takes care of each other." Funny how that rule only seemed to apply to me. Then there was my younger sister, Margot. She was the golden child, the one my parents pinned all their hopes on. They wanted her to have the opportunities I didn't, and that meant I was the one footing the bill. I worked myself to exhaustion to make sure she had everything she needed for college, her tuition, rent, even spending money so she wouldn't have to struggle like I did. I told myself it was worth it, that once she graduated and got a good job, things would finally turn around. That was the lie I kept telling myself for years. At some point, my life stopped feeling like my own. I had no social life, no real hobbies, and no future plans beyond working myself to the bone. My mom made sure of that. Every time I tried to save even a little for myself, she'd guilt-trip me into handing it over. "We're all in this together," she'd say. "We'll take care of you when things get better." Except they never got better. Years passed, and I finally landed a well-paying corporate job. For the first time, I wasn't just scraping by. I had real financial security. I thought this meant I could finally start saving for myself, maybe even move out and have a life of my own. I was wrong. The moment my family found out about my new job, the requests started pouring in. They weren't small anymore either. Suddenly, I was expected to cover bigger expenses, down payments, medical bills, even vacations. And when I tried to set boundaries, my mom's guilt-tripping reached a whole new level. "How could you be so selfish?" she'd say. "After everything we've been through, you're just going to abandon us?" Ian kept finding new ways to screw up, and every time, my mom expected me to fix it. And Margot, she had no problem enjoying the money I sent her way. She was living comfortably while I was still in a cramped apartment, eating instant noodles to make sure I had enough to send home. And then I found out the truth. One day, a coworker casually mentioned seeing Margot on social media, living it up in luxury. Brand name clothes, expensive trips, even a brand new car. I was confused. I knew for a fact she didn't have a job. I went digging, and what I found made my blood run cold. All this time, while I was barely getting by, Margot had been living a lifestyle I could only dream of, all funded by me. My money wasn't just going to her necessities. It was going to her shopping sprees, her weekend getaways, her designer handbags. When I confronted my family about it, the reaction was eye-opening. Instead of apologizing, they turned it back on me. "So what?" Margot scoffed. "You always said you didn't need much. Why does it matter?" And my mom, she just sighed, as if I was being unreasonable. "She deserves nice things. Luna, don't you want your sister to be happy?" That was the moment everything clicked. They never planned to take care of me. They never cared about the sacrifices I made. To them, I was nothing more than a walking ATM. I had spent my entire adult life giving up everything for them. And for what? That was the moment I decided, enough. Update 1. The moment I walked away from my family, I expected things to be different. Maybe not easier, but at least quieter. I thought they would finally leave me alone. I was wrong. Without me financing their lives, things fell apart fast. The bills that I used to cover started piling up. Margot had to scale back her spending, which didn't sit well with her. Ian, as usual, had no plan and no savings, and my parents were struggling to keep the house. And they blamed me. It didn't take long for me to hear the rumors. A mutual friend pulled me aside at work, looking awkward before finally saying, "Your mom's been telling people you abandoned them after getting rich." Rich? I was barely making ends meet in my own tiny apartment, but that didn't matter. The narrative had already spread. According to my mother, I was selfish, ungrateful, and heartless. I had used my family for years and then turned my back on them when they needed me most. It was infuriating, but what hit me the hardest was how easily people believed her. Some of my parents' friends stopped talking to me. Even distant relatives I barely knew sent me nasty messages, calling me a disappointment. Meanwhile, I was struggling to keep my own life together. Without realizing it, I had spent years building my family's safety net while leaving myself completely exposed. I had no savings, no financial plan, and suddenly no support system. For the first time in my life, I had to figure out how to take care of myself. A coworker noticed I was barely holding it together and suggested therapy. I hesitated. Therapy had always been a luxury I never allowed myself, but in that moment, I had nothing left to lose. The first session was like having my entire life spelled out for me. The therapist listened to my story, nodded, and said, "Your family has been emotionally and financially manipulating you for years." Hearing it out loud made everything click. The guilt, the obligation, the way they made me feel selfish for even thinking about myself. It had been happening for so long that I hadn't even questioned it. Determined to start fresh, I finally sat down to go through my finances. That's when I found it, the credit card. It was in my name. It had been open for years, and it was maxed out. At first, I thought it was a mistake. But the transactions made it clear. Expensive shopping sprees, luxury purchases, money withdrawals I had never made. My mother had been using it the whole time. I went straight to my parents' house, heart pounding. I knocked, and Ian answered the door. He didn't even let me speak before shoving the door closed in my face. "You're dead to us." Just like that. I stood there for a long moment before turning and walking away. The next day, I met with a lawyer. I explained everything. The fraudulent credit card, the unauthorized transactions, the debt in my name. He told me I had a strong case for fraud charges. If I wanted to, I could press charges against my mother. I hesitated. No matter how badly they had treated me, could I really do that? That night, I got a message from an old friend, Emily. We hadn't talked in years, but she had seen the rumors and wanted to check in. After a few minutes of catching up, she casually dropped, "Margot's been bragging about how easy it was to get you to pay for everything. She says you were too dumb to ever say no." Something in me snapped. I was done being used, done being their personal piggy bank. The next morning, I went back to the lawyer and filed a police report. The fallout was immediate. My mother called me, screaming. I hung up. Ian sent a string of angry messages. I blocked him. Margot? She didn't even pretend to be sorry. She just texted, "How could you do this to Mom?" As if I was the villain in all of this. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I threw myself into work, picking up extra shifts and learning about financial independence. I started watching videos about setting boundaries, reading books about toxic family dynamics. The more I learned, the more I realized just how deep their manipulation had gone. Then, my lawyer called me with an update. Because the credit card fraud was in my name, the bank was going after my mother for repayment. If she couldn't pay, she would face serious legal consequences. It was the first real sign that karma was coming for them. Update 2. The legal case moved fast. The bank demanded repayment for the fraudulent credit card, and with no way to pay, my mother was facing real consequences. She tried to negotiate, claiming it was a family misunderstanding, but the fraud department didn't care. Either she paid back the money, or the case would move forward. Instead of taking responsibility, my family doubled down. The rumors got worse. I heard through mutual friends that my mother was telling everyone I had set her up, and that I was trying to destroy the family over a little money. Meanwhile, Ian's life started crumbling. Without my financial support, his reckless spending caught up with him. He was late on rent, defaulted on a car loan, and then lost his job after missing too many shifts. He was now scrambling for a way out, but no one was there to bail him out this time. Margot wasn't doing much better. Her spending habits didn't change, but her income did because there was no more money coming from me. She was forced to downgrade, selling off designer bags and cutting back on expensive outings. She threw a tantrum online, complaining about how unfair life was. Then, out of nowhere, my father reached out. It wasn't an apology, it was an attempt to guilt me. He talked about forgiving and forgetting and keeping the family together. But it was clear he only cared now, because they needed something from me. I didn't respond. Update 3. The fallout wasn't over. Not even close. Even though the fraud case against my mother was moving forward, I was still dealing with the mess she left behind. The debt collectors started coming after me aggressively. Calls at all hours, voicemails piling up, emails demanding payments I never authorized. No matter how many times I explained that the charges were fraudulent, the response was the same. Until the investigation was officially closed, I was still on the hook. Then came the credit freeze. My credit score had taken a major hit. I tried applying for a new credit card to start rebuilding, but I was denied. I looked into moving into a slightly better apartment, denied. Even my current landlord started side-eyeing me when a routine background check flagged my credit issues. It didn't matter that I was the victim. The system didn't care. And my family? They weren't done trying to ruin me. Somehow they had convinced more people to turn against me. The same distant relatives who never lifted a finger to help us when we were struggling suddenly had a lot to say. Old family friends who I hadn't spoken to in years sent nasty messages, accusing me of attacking my own mother. One of my aunts even posted online about how I was tearing the family apart over money. The comments were full of people I barely knew calling me greedy, selfish, heartless. Then I found something even worse. While sorting through my finances, I uncovered another credit card in my name. I hadn't opened it. It had been maxed out a long time ago, and the balance was now sitting in collections. They had been stealing from me for years. I sat there, staring at the overdue balance. All those times I thought I was struggling because of bad luck or unexpected bills. It wasn't bad luck. It was them. Fenced them. They had drained me dry, then acted like I was the problem when I couldn't give anymore. It all hit at once. The betrayal, the debt, the isolation. I hadn't been sleeping much, but now the insomnia was unbearable. The stress was eating me alive. My heart pounded at random moments, my hands would shake, and my body felt like it was constantly on edge. I must have looked like a wreck at work because a coworker pulled me aside and asked if I was okay. I brushed it off at first, but she didn't buy it. She handed me the number of a financial advisor and told me to at least consider it. A few days later, I got another unexpected call. This time, it wasn't a debt collector, it was a storage facility. Apparently, a unit had been rented in my name. The bill was overdue, and they were calling to let me know that if I didn't pay, the contents would be auctioned off. I had never rented a storage unit. I went down to the facility to see it for myself. The moment the manager opened the unit, I felt sick. It was packed full of junk. Random furniture, bags of clothes, unopened boxes. My family had been hoarding things there for years, on my dime. I walked out without paying, let them auction it. Not long after, Ian called. It was an unknown number, so I stupidly picked up. He didn't waste time pretending to be sorry. Instead, he immediately launched into a rant about how I had ruined everything and how he was on the verge of losing his apartment. He wanted me to fix it. He wanted me to call his old boss and smooth things over so he could get his job back. I hung up. Later, a mutual acquaintance let me know that Ian had been bragging about getting creative with his finances. It wasn't hard to guess what that meant. He had been reckless his whole life, but now with no safety net, he was getting desperate. I wasn't going to be a part of it. So, I blocked him. I blocked Margot too, after she sent another string of messages demanding that I fix the situation with Mom. They weren't going to stop until they had drained me completely. So I made sure they couldn't. I went back to my lawyer and reported every single fraudulent debt I had found. No hesitation this time. My mother had put me through financial hell, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. A few days later, my lawyer called with an update. The case against my mother was stronger than expected. With multiple fraudulent accounts tied to her, the legal consequences were escalating fast. If she couldn't pay, jail time was a real possibility. And just like that, karma started catching up. Margot, who had spent years flaunting her lifestyle online, was now struggling to keep up appearances. Her rich friends were distancing themselves, probably realizing she had nothing left to offer. No more luxury vacations. No more expensive shopping sprees. She was finally feeling what it was like to be cut off. Update 4. Word spread fast. At first, my family had successfully painted me as the villain, the selfish daughter who abandoned them after making it big. But now, the truth was catching up. People started realizing my mother had committed fraud, that I had been financially drained for years, and that my so-called family had been living off my sacrifices while I struggled. The sympathy they once had? Gone. Ian was the first to take a hit. With no job, no savings, and no way to cover rent, he was evicted. His complaints about how unfair life was didn't get him any help. The landlord had heard about the fraud case and wasn't interested in excuses. Then Ian's bank account was suddenly locked. Apparently, there were irregular transactions being investigated. Whether it was from unpaid debts, fraud, or something worse, I didn't know, and I didn't care. Margot's downfall wasn't far behind. Without my money funding her tuition and lifestyle, she had to drop out of university. Her social media went from glamorous vacation photos to bitter rants about how the system is unfair. No one was buying it. Meanwhile, I threw myself into work. For the first time in my life, I wasn't dealing with constant financial emergencies. My focus paid off, my boss noticed my performance, and I landed a promotion. Then, a major win. I got confirmation from my lawyer that some of the fraudulent debts in my name had been removed. My credit score was still recovering, but at least I wasn't drowning in debt anymore. Margot, desperate for attention, tried to spin the situation in her favor. Someone sent me a link to a GoFundMe she had created. The title? Betrayed by my own sister. She claimed I had selfishly abandoned my family, leaving her homeless and struggling. The donation goal? $20,000. It barely reached a few hundred before people started calling her out. Screenshots of her past spending habits, expensive vacations, and designer purchases flooded the comments. The fundraiser flopped, and she deleted it. And then, the final blow, the house was foreclosed. My parents had been drowning in debt for years, but without me covering for them, there was nothing left to save them. Ian and Margot had been living there rent-free, assuming someone else would fix things. Now with nowhere to go, they were forced to face reality. The same family that once mocked me for walking away had lost everything. Update 5. The final fallout came fast. My mother's fraud case had been dragging on for months, but now it was over. The judge handed down the sentence, several months in jail for identity theft and credit fraud. She had fought to avoid it, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, that she was just a struggling mother trying to help her family. The court didn't buy it. With my mother officially sentenced, whatever was left of her reputation was destroyed. The same people who once defended her had gone silent. She had no one left to manipulate. Ian wasn't far behind. A former coworker from his old job reached out to me, casually mentioning that Ian's name had come up in an internal investigation. Apparently, he hadn't just been bad with money, he had been stealing. Small amounts at first, then bigger ones, until someone finally noticed. His former employer reported him, and now, he was facing an embezzlement charge. Meanwhile, Margot's GoFundMe scam completely backfired. Someone had taken the time to dig through her social media, finding years of posts flaunting her expensive shopping sprees, vacations, and luxury purchases. The screenshots went viral. Whatever sympathy she had tried to gain evaporated overnight. But even after all of that, she still didn't learn. A message popped up from an unfamiliar account. It was Margot. She had found a way around my blocks and was trying to reach me again. At first, it was an apology, dramatic, over the top, full of empty words about how she had been going through a lot and how she just wanted to talk. I ignored it. Minutes later, a second message came in. The tone had completely changed. The fake apology was gone, replaced by insults and accusations. Blocked. Again. At my next legal meeting, my lawyer walked me through finalizing protections on my finances. My family would never be able to open accounts in my name again. That door was officially closed, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly secure. Margot, cut off from any financial help, had to scramble. She ended up moving in with an ex-boyfriend, one she had dumped back when she had money. It didn't last long. Within weeks, she was back to complaining online about how nobody helps each other anymore. And Ian? His problems kept piling up. After losing his apartment and his bank account access, he started looking for quick money. He got involved in a fraud scheme, and this time he wasn't just under investigation. He was caught. His charges were worse than our mother's. He was now facing real jail time. As for my mother, when she finally got out, nobody was waiting for her. Even her closest friends had distanced themselves. There was no grand welcome home, no pity party, just silence. I wasn't there to see it. I had already moved on. With my finances in order and my debts finally cleared, I moved into a beautiful new apartment. No more cramped spaces, no more financial stress. It was mine, completely and fully. At work, I had been thriving. No distractions, no emergency expenses draining me dry. That hard work paid off when my boss called me in and offered me another promotion. And then something unexpected. A coworker I had always gotten along with, someone kind, steady, and nothing like the toxic people from my past, asked me out. And for the first time in my life, I felt ready. Karma had done its job. My mother was a convicted felon. Ian was facing prison time. Margot had burned every bridge she had left. And me? I was finally free.